If you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Welcome back to Unblocked Creators, the show that investigates the question of how we can unblock our creative power to move from the heaviness of the existential burdens we all face to a life defined by awe and wonder, and tap into our creative power to live with agency, purpose, and meaning. I talk to creators of all kinds about how they found their way. Today I have Kimia Nora on the show. I was very excited to spend some time with her in California and learn from her expertise on the neuroscience behind healing chronic pain conditions. Also, how neuroscience and neuroplasticity applies to life and business success. So, without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Thank you, Kimia Nora, for being with me today and for showing me around this part of California a little bit. Glad we could get together.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And also, yeah, we've loved having you here and showing you our place and our neighborhood. Yeah, it's great.
Thank you. So I'd like to talk to you about some of your expertise in the neuroscience of pain, also the neuroplasticity in regard to other aspects of life, like success in life in general. But I first found you through your writings online. I saw your posts on X, and they stood out, so I followed you, and I kept seeing, and eventually I found out a little bit more about your interests in work of people like John Sarno and others who we'll talk about. And I've had my own experience with chronic pain, so your work stood out. And now we've kind of gotten to know each other also on the level of there's the whole creator economy space and online entrepreneurship. So how did you start writing online, and what's that been like?
Yeah, so I started writing online. I first got introduced to the idea of writing online for the purpose of building an audience and also building a school of thought from Dan Koe. And he's a creator on YouTube primarily. And his content just really stood out. It was just really good messaging. It really resonated with my natural sort of desires and tendencies. And he introduced writing online as this like huge lever. You could, first of all, you get good at writing, which means you get good at thinking and articulating. And then ideas, because media and code are kind of similar on the internet, ideas kind of spread on their own when they're really good. And sort of he was showing that you could compound your efforts on the internet through your ideas and sort of build a school of thought. And the authorship route was very sort of attractive to me because I always was into writing. I always found writing to be a passion of mine. I had never really put any of my stuff out there. But yeah, I tested it. I pretty much got into it right after I found out online, and I started testing and sort of seeing where this thing's gonna go. And at first, I was just trying to figure out how to write online. And then I started to focus on, okay, how can I make my ideas appealing to an online audience who might have sort of never been exposed to my ideas or these ideas that I have been exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I started being interested in, like getting good at the craft of writing. Yeah, and treating it like any other skill. Like the more I started writing, the more I started to feel like sort of like an engineer, like an architect, but with words, with ideas. And yeah, at this point, for me, it's more about developing those ideas more, building that school of thought even more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's incredible how many facets of life a practice of writing can start to improve, right? And doing it online has a lot of leverage, as Dan has been someone who's helped many people become aware of, myself included. So.
Yeah, and writing is very interesting because, you know, people have written books that were written hundreds of years ago, and we still refer to them. We still read them. We still know their names. Like, there are some extremely famous writers who became famous after they died. And this whole compounding effect of language and ideas and code, that's also very appealing to me, because to me it's like, oh, the work, like knowledge goes so much farther than just like one person. Like it spreads out, you know, and it grows on its own when the knowledge especially is accurate.
Yeah, it can feel more purposeful contributing to something like that than being on an assembly line of like things that are just more temporary, right? Get to contribute to something lasting and be part of the evolution of ideas. So some of the thinkers that influenced you, I know you've talked a bit about Yogananda, of course, and the whole yogic tradition. Did that come more so before all your interest in the scientific approach?
Yeah, so my interest in science actually started after my exposure to what Yogananda had been teaching and had left behind essentially in the form of writing. He came to America from India in the 1920s, so that's right around 100 years ago. And he introduced this idea of religion having a scientific basis, because religion has to deal with reality and the truth. And also, like, you look around you, like everything, there's a science to it. Like the sun, the moon, the way the earth rotates, and the whole interaction between all substances and organisms, and all phenomena are, there's science. The whole thing appears to have a scientific order to it. And me getting exposed to these teachings of Yogananda and learning that, oh, like, you know, there is a scientific method to finding this sort of greater reality, or more permanent sort of order that is there, but it's not that distinguishable with your eyes open. And if somehow, you know, I was very interested as a young woman in spirituality after I had some sort of spontaneous experiences of, you know, other. Whereas before, you know, I grew up in a Muslim country, Iran, and the pressure, you know, the sort of strict rulership and pressure, psychological pressure that they put on people under the name of religion, that actually had turned me off of religion, and I had become atheistic. But by the time I was 18, I had I was interested in meditation, yoga, some psychedelics, and then I took a risk. You know, I took a risk of like exploring, like, what would happen if I actually like do this thing who nobody in my family has ever done, this idea of like meditation. What would happen if I study this thing called Yogic Sciences? And you know, at the time I had no idea what really I was doing. I was just interested, I was just curious, because also I was going to school and I was upset at the crudeness of all the sciences and all the compartmentalization of, oh, this is separate from this, from this, from this. But when you really look at it, you're like, oh, this is the whole, this is one system. Like, why are all these parts separate? But the yogic sciences were very unifying. And and then there was a time where I got introduced to Yogananda's, because Yogananda brought these teachings of the science of religion to America, but he also brought some very sort of like how to live guidelines and principles of which are applicable for anybody, for any human being who's not even interested in religion. And for example, some of his methods were how to heal your body of disease, how to alleviate psychological states of friction, and how to, you've been in a cycle of learned helplessness and poverty. How do you break out of that cycle using this idea of power of concentration and focused attention, focused intention, and also in that book where he gives all these instructions, he says mind-body medicine, the medicine of the future. And this book I had read, it was written in 1922, and it was the very first book he ever published. And it's also the smallest book he ever published. And, at the time, I'm like, this is all really cool. I'm very passionate about it, but at the same time feel very isolated from society around me. My family, they kind of don't get it, why I'm so interested in meditation. And a few years later, I get introduced to somebody named Joe Dispenza. Now, Joe Dispenza is a very interesting figure in our modern history because when he was a young man, he was also heavily influenced by Yogananda. And one of my friends had a dinner with him, and he asked him, what do you think of Autobiography of Yogi and Yogananda? And Joe Dispenza said, that's the reason I started all of this in the first place.
Wow.
And he tells a story of being an 18-year-old young man reading the Autobiography of Yogi and being really pissed off. He's like, I'm so pissed. Like, is this reality? Like, why am I living in this other, like, materialistic reality when these, like, yogis are talking about, like, direct contact with God? And there's stories in the book of, like, people, like, growing their limbs back, after they were severed. So this whole idea of mind-body, the mind over body, mind-body connection, that was very intriguing to him as a young man. And the story is that he gets into an accident, break his spine in 6 spots. And the doctors are like, okay, there's a 50% chance you're going to walk again, but you have to do this surgery and put all these rods in your spine. And Joe is like, there has to be a better way. And he kind of questions the doctor's perspective. And as a chiropractor, he's like, well, I know, his perspective is a little off. Because I know, he tested him. He said, is this part of the spine flexible? And the doctor said, no, this part of the spine is not flexible at all. And Joe Dispenza is like, listen, I know this part of the spine is flexible. And he kind of showed, he asked his friend to show it to him. And then that's when he realizes there are gaps of knowledge in this doctor's perspective. Mm-hmm. And then he takes a huge risk, which is to try to heal his body through behavioral changes, through a mind-body, through visualization. And then what happens is he ends up healing. He ends up completely healing his spine, walking, and all the sensations come back to his legs. Everything's functioning properly. But he had made a commitment prior to him healing. He said, if I heal, I will commit the rest of my life to studying this phenomena, which he ends up doing it. He ends up healing, and he ends up completely one-pointed concentration, single-handedly. He starts writing this body of knowledge. He creates a mental model where this unified field theory and biological science and quantum physics and all these sort of sciences merge together as one in this holistic science of consciousness, and that biology is not really irresponsive to intentions and thoughts. It's actually very responsive. It's almost like immediately responsive, and that's how like placebo effects work, you know? It's like perception and biology sort of, or biology changes according to perception, because biology doesn't really have a mind of its own. It has, like, it receives all your data from your energy and information system, which is consciousness. So I began to do this work. It is Joe Dispenza stuff. It took me a year to get to a place where I am fully convinced that everything he's teaching is scientifically accurate. Even though my first retreat, I was like, this is so woo. I was like, this is as woo as it gets.
You were dealing with pain at this time?
I was dealing with a lot of stuff. I was dealing with pain, severe depression, extreme fatigue, and brain fog, and also just having given up sort of on trying, because you're just like so dysregulated and like shut down, and yeah, I couldn't really get out of bed in the morning. You know, like with depression, people say the hardest thing to do is get out of bed. Yeah, and that was the hardest part of my day, was getting out of bed. Whereas now it's like, oh, I get out of bed every day without, missing a beat, and it's like 7 a.m. every morning. Whereas like I have to work really hard to get out of bed by like 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of Joe Dispenza's primary ideas is this idea of neuroplasticity. The idea that, first of all, the brain, like this idea that the brain controls the majority of our biology and our biological functions. So if the brain is under sort of repeated chronic stress, and if the brain is always perceiving danger in its environment, then the brain signals the body that we're not safe, we're not in a safe environment, and we have to be vigilant. We have to be keeping an eye out for things that are going to go wrong. And also the brain learns, is the most adaptive organ we possess. It learns, and it learns really fast, especially when it's related to survival and fear. And there's a lot of emotional sort of data behind an experience. And the brain can get conditioned. It can sort of get molded and predict the same predictions sort of year after year. And these ideas resonated with me because I had realized that all these problems that I'm experiencing now, I have been experiencing in the past. I've actually been living with these problems all my life. But now it was at a place where I was completely dysfunctional and really not able to just push it under the rug and say it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And yeah, Joe, the emphasis is on the brain. The emphasis is on the brain. And it's that if you change your brain, if you heal your brain, if your brain is regulated, if it's coherent, the various parts of the brain are communicating with each other with coherence. The brain is feeling safe. Okay, there's no danger. We can go into homeostasis. We no longer have to be protecting. And, you know, all these, I had so much shoulder pain. And because, you know, growing up, I was just always stressed out.
Yeah.
You know, my shoulders were always trying to kind of like protect myself and make sure I don't get like, you know, like I don't get um you know, something like
Whatever threat your brain
abused
is
or punished
expecting.
or yeah, all these things of, and especially growing up in Iran, a very punishing school system. So you're always like afraid of your teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I was sitting in that posture for like hours a day as a little kid, and I had learned a lot of associations. I had learned a lot of associations with my own body, with my own emotions, with, you know, this whole idea of fascia. You know, my fascia was just so tight and rigid and stiff. And this nervous system regulation stuff, I believe, again, because the brain is the master allocator of energy, when it starts regulating, it kind of starts to distribute energy evenly throughout the body. So instead of it's withdrawing blood and oxygen from the shoulders in the back, it's now like, oh, like it's free, we can breathe now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my direct. I wasn't really pursuing neuroplasticity per se, but I was pursuing what Joe was teaching. And a huge portion of it was neuroplasticity, although there's other stuff involved. But because I was experiencing my own brain change rapidly in these meditations, and I was experiencing as my brain's changing, like everything's changing. Like my whole, like the way I move through space is changing,
Yeah.
right? And um, and then I started to research neuroplasticity on its own, like because suddenly I'm interested. I'm like, wait, hold on a minute. Are there other doctors in America who are talking about this? Like, are there clinicians who are talking about neuroplasticity? And that was my question, and I started researching it, and then lo and behold, I find this entire community of doctors and physicians and scientists who have been fighting for this idea of neuroplasticity becoming a real clinical process for addressing symptoms that are related to nervous system dysregulation, which is, you know, chronic pain being one of the most common. But then there's a plethora of symptoms like long COVID, Lyme disease, you know, CRPS, fibromyalgia, all these sort of, essentially any symptom that the regular doctor can't address through regular means of medication, surgery, injections, all that stuff. And, you know, they've done all the tests, like with long COVID, people do the tests. With Lyme disease, they do all the tests, and there's like nothing.
Yeah.
There is no blood, there's nothing in their blood showing that there's something wrong with them. But they feel like there's something wrong with them because there is something wrong, but it's a stress-induced, learned sort of compounded effect.
Yeah.
Whereas, there's nothing physical. Like the nervous system is internally under stress. Like there's something else foundationally going in the system. Whereas, you got this virus from the outside. Oh, you got this tick, you know, or like, you know,
Injury.
I fell on my back, and that's how I developed injury. Or I developed chronic pain. And all this time I thought, you know, my back is injured. Like my back is permanently damaged because of this fall I had. But it, you know, when I started to study these nervous system and neuroplasticity based practices, one of the first parts of the sort of treatment is education, is neuroscience education, is you first learn that all pain, all bodily sensations are under the control of the brain. And so when somebody hits you, it's not the nerves in your body that are signaling pain. It's the brain that tells your body to feel pain. So the experience of pain, whether there's a physical thing involved or it's nervous system induced, the only organ in the body responsible for the experience of pain is the brain. So in this neuroplasticity stuff, we don't care about the body. Like, we are just like, don't worry about your body. The only thing we want to focus on is your brain. Like, your body will automatically heal when the brain perceives safety as like a baseline. Because the brain, can perceive safety. Like, you do meditation, it feels great for that moment. And that's the brain is perceiving safety. Or you do a massage and the brain is perceives safety. But it only lasts for a few days. And that's because that baseline function of the brain is still that autonomic sort of, the baseline that the brain always wants to go back to, that hasn't changed. And that's their like brain retraining stuff that we do.
Hey, I've got to pause the episode for just a moment to remind you of the Future Proof Creator Summit. It's happening in Vancouver, Canada this June 5th to 7th. 3 days immersed in a ballroom with other creators who are seeking their entrepreneurial way. Kimia Nora will be there speaking on stage, more in depth on these topics of the neuroscience of success and wellness. We'll also have the legend himself, Dan Koe, author of The Art of Focus, whose work has profoundly influenced a lot of creators who've gone on to find great success. We'll also hear from Kieran Drew, the ex-dentist who left behind that esteemed career to become a writer online and went on to eventually make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. There are over a dozen incredibly inspiring speakers to help educate us and fill in all of our knowledge gaps, inspire us to tap into our creative power to build a meaningful, purposeful income. We all know how isolating and challenging it can be to build a business and to build a brand. A lot of the people around you probably don't understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, and it's hard not to let people's doubts seep in. So, to me, it's very important to show up in rooms with like minds where people are going to help you stay devoted to doing what it takes to actualize your creative potential and earn a meaningful living. So go to thelivinginternet.com if you're interested to learn more. The link is in the description. And at the time of this episode, tickets are the lowest that they will ever be. And there are many reasons why they say the early bird gets the worm, right? Those who show up early demonstrate themselves as someone who shows up. So as soon as you get your ticket, you'll get access to the premium tier of the Living Internet University, where you can start networking with the same community that's going to show up in person in Vancouver. So to those who are serious about their creative success, I'll see you in person at the Future Proof Creator Summit this June. So I discovered John Sarno's work maybe 6 or 7 years ago because I was dealing with chronic pain in my upper back. And so I saw his book title, or someone recommended him. And so I read it, and I was kind of open by then to like, okay, there could be a combination of some kind of psychosomatic thing going on. But it felt like a physical, very, very physical cause of pain in my back, right? Like something was wrong. It felt like an object lodged in my back, like pinching nerves and stuff. But when I read John Sarno's work, and he points out how the brain is like protecting you, basically, and his theory from the beginning was that repressed rage was the thing that your brain protects you from feeling, and then it creates this like defense response, right? And then creates pain. And I didn't think of myself as an angry person, right? So I'm like, well, okay, I get it. He's saying it's repressed rage. So I'm not aware of it. Okay. And he starts a lot with education, right? He says, like, you have to find out that there's not actually something structurally wrong. And even people with, there's plenty of people with like slipped discs and stuff who don't have chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
So it was compelling, but I was still in pain, right? And it kind of opened me up. And eventually, like, I did uncover more awareness that there's, yeah, I mean, as a little child, I was pretty angry sometimes. And then you're told that that's annoying, for one thing, right? An angry child who doesn't even know how to communicate, it's confusing, it's annoying. So you're kind of told, like, not to be that way, not to express that anger. And so I became a good little boy and moved on with life and, learned how to make people happy. But I think there is a lot of that then that's like so built in that I got some healing in stages where I was like, it's like life and my exploration, like doing some kind of inner work, journaling and finding out what's underneath. I feel like life kind of opened up more permission for me to feel more of what's going on and to like take ownership of it. And I had a lot of healing, but in the past few months, I'm sort of having a repeat, like the way the tension is forming on the other side of my back. It's not as severe as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But now I know, like, okay, the more stressed I am, the more pain there is.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's certain things where it's like, if I get really stressed about financial worries, it reflects like past experiences where it was really high stress because I didn't know how I was going to handle it. And so I think part of it for me is like realizing, to understand, to feel safe, you have to like realize a greater context or something that, yeah, like I am okay even when these various stressors come along. So, yeah, how do you start to have someone believe? Because I know that a lot of the work now is continuing on that same path. It's not just massage or going to the chiropractor. It's more like, I mean, yoga seems to help, but not just because I'm stretching. It's more like I'm spending this time with myself, noticing and allowing what's going on inside. So how do you start helping someone believe that they can rewire their brain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, I don't think my job is really to make anybody believe, right, that they can do this thing. Like, let's say you've signed up for like a fitness program and the goal is to like grow muscle. And like you would know that, like, okay, if I stuck to this plan and if I did these things and I took these diet stuff, I would probably grow muscle. Like, I would probably, like, in 6 months, I'd probably be bigger, like, have more definition.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found with neuroplasticity, it's actually not a matter of belief. It's just a matter of, like, trying, like, just allowing. And, like, your brain will change on its own. It's like the process. It's like, oh, if you just go through the process, like, your brain's changing. That's the practice. Like, that's the therapeutic method that we are sort of trying to bring and sort of make it more available or raise more awareness that, hey, it is available.
Yeah.
And one thing I learned in my practice is that it's easier to change your brain than it is to build muscle in the gym. Because the brain is, first of all, human brains are the most adaptive brains across all life. So no other animal brain has the neuroplastic capacity that our brain has. So like our neuroplasticity is unmatched across the natural world. And not only that, but the brain is also the most flexible and adaptive organ in our own bodies. So like that's why change your brain is easier than growing muscle in the gym. And that's why also like we see people who've been in chronic pain for like 10 years and they go through the program and it's like a 60-day sort of protocol. And then by the end of the 60 days, they're like I don't have pain. Like it's gone. And it's just that it just works. It doesn't always work that quickly. Some people read John Sarno's book and their pain goes away completely and never comes back.
Yeah.
Some people read John Sarno's book, but pain doesn't go away, but then that's why we have these therapeutic models of, pain reprocessing therapy, emotional awareness and expression therapy, which are the two protocols that Howard Schuppener and his colleagues that are sort of apprentices of John Sarno. So they've been fighting for it and researching it and making it very clinically applicable and repeatable. Mm-hmm. And just the trials have been great. I mean, they have really fleshed out the process to a really exact science. So yeah, it's really like do you believe if you practice chess, do you think you'll learn it?
Yeah, I'll get better.
Yeah, so it's the same thing.
Right.
Like I'm not, because
it's a learning response.
Yeah, exactly. It's an adaptation that happens on its own as the brain learns, right? And the learning process is not really a conscious process. Like, oh, I need to go sit here and like think about these things to change my brain. Whereas like, oh, I actually, like in brain retraining, we work with the sensations of the body and emotions. And because that's the brain, right? The brain is an emotional organ.
Yeah.
It's an essential organ. It governs all these sort of systems. So yeah, it's just about what we say is like put your attention away, like take your attention off of your body and put it on your brain, like stop worrying about your pain so much.
It's very interesting. It's so counterintuitive in a way, because to imagine that, okay, you fall and you hurt your back, the pain is a learned response of the brain. It doesn't feel that way, and it's not how we think about it. So like, you've studied it enough to understand like the mechanics behind it and to understand it, right? Mm-hmm. So like it makes sense to say the brain has learned to like basically give you or like create the sensation of pain, even though there's not an ongoing need for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's
because the brain learns by association. So let's say there is a child. Also, like children don't get chronic pain, and there's a good reason for that. So let's say a child is growing up in a really loving environment. They feel loved, taken care of, supported, and that child, falls and then gets right back up, and then he or she is like, okay, I'm good, I'll heal, it's fine, I just fell. But then let's say another child is in a really stressful environment. He or she is sort of isolated from his family, maybe a little belittled, maybe his school is kind of bullying him. But what's happening in his nervous system, he feels othered. He feels less than. He feels like something's wrong with me. I'm not lovable. I'm not supported. Nobody wants to support me. Nobody wants to take care of me. And that's very stressful for a nervous system. And what happens now, that child falls. And that child's brain is already hypervigilant, is already feeling, I'm not safe. There's something wrong with me. Now this child falls and hurts his back. Now the brain learns by association that I'm under danger. Now I'm like really under danger. And that association, because there's this strong emotional makeup, the brain makes that connection of, it's not safe for me to express my needs. It's not safe for me to express my emotions, how I really feel. I'm not really allowed to feel, to be. And I feel all these emotions. And now this system of emotion and sensation, which is a protective, like the mechanism of emotion is to help us go towards what's good for us and to move away from what's bad for us. And when you're not allowed to feel in a society, then people don't feel their feelings, and people also don't feel their pain, right? Like in my experience, after I became pain-free, I realized how much pain I was in, and I was sort of holding my breath, trying to make sure I don't feel how much pain I was in, how isolated I had been feeling from the biopsychosocial network that we are in as human, societies.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how it happens. That's the whole. They call it the biopsychosocial sort of paradigm, and it's about what's happening internally. Like, what's happening? What's this organism feeling? Does this organism feel like they're under threat, or do they feel like, oh, I'm in a safe place? Because if you feel safe, you are in homeostasis. Like the brain is like, oh, we're good. We can take deep breaths. We can see things better. We can be here.
Yeah.
Instead of being preoccupied with, I need to fix all these problems, or I won't be accepted in society, or I won't be able to function. I won't be loved. I won't be taken care of.
Yeah.
And so all these like emotional dynamics, it's all brain stuff. It's all conditioning. It's all learned. And also these things kind of get passed down. Like, so, yeah, these sort of social dynamics, they kind of propagate themselves over time.
Well, you have me thinking a bit about how it applies also to not just perception of pain or threats that cause your body to then experience pain, but all kinds of threats that would cause someone to not have the success in life that they want, or to not feel like they can create the life that they want. And so it has
Feeling
me...
disempowered.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of it.
And you see people who, live in constant sort of cycles of anxiety or poverty or pain, and people who are really thriving. And sometimes it seems like most of it is a matter of like what they're anticipating coming next makes that thing happen in some sense. Like it brings that result, which sounds kind of overly mystical in a way. People can feel like that sounds like, like the whole manifestation thing can sound too mystical to people, but we are seeing through this set of filters and expectations, right? So like if you see that there's no opportunities around you, then you just don't see opportunities around you. So what do you think about like using this understanding to achieve more of what you want in life?
Yeah. So, one question I really like to ask myself when I get stuck in some emotional state of paralysis, doubt, expecting the worst outcome, talking myself out of the good stuff I was gonna do. When that happens, I ask myself, is this familiar? Is this a familiar feeling? Have you been here in the past? Because if I have, then I know what I'm working with. Then I know this is friction that I've learned from the past. This is resistance, doubt. This is that fear response, right? The brain is perceiving something dangerous. So it literally cuts more energy to go in that direction. It literally is like, no, shut off. We're done. We're not pursuing this anymore. It's too dangerous. I experienced failure that last time. I experienced isolation. I experienced somebody belittling me or not accepting me, or I did that to myself, you know, or, I'm putting too much pressure. There's so much pressure. Like, you have to make this. And so if you don't, you're going to die. And of course, in these conditions, under these circumstances, the brain is really resistant to change and is really resistant to adapt, because when there's stress around, it's not much time for learning, right? Because stress is a protective response, and learning is the opposite of protection. It's curiosity. It's taking risks.
There's room for risk.
Yeah.
In a stress response, it's all about mitigating risk, so you have to act fast. You have to react.
Mm-hmm.
Just like pure reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. See, like with my yoga practice, like I said, I used to think it was more about it is partly about the movement practices and this, like the stretching, but it was more recently I realized when I neglect my yoga practice, what I'm really neglecting is that type of time spent with myself, where I'm able to become conscious of the programs that are running, right? Like day to day, there's just all these programs running to be efficient. Yeah. So can you share about like how you you eventually became pain-free after a long time of dealing with a lot of pain. And you've also achieved quite a bit in business and with your online writing. And what's it been like? Like what did you have to do to make it happen? And then how has that felt, like healing and achieving what you have?
Yeah. I would say when I started writing online initially, I cared about the craft of writing, and I cared about what I write. I really wanted to write what I wanted to write. Because when I first got in the online space, it's like people write things just because they know this is an interesting topic that's going to go viral. But I was like, I have all these crazy ideas, and it's like, I know, I can build something out of this, like, because there's so many people that would, it took me 7 years to become pain-free, to even get access to this knowledge, even though all of it was available out there. These doctors have been doing this for, since John Sarno, which was 45 years ago, 41 years ago. So it's been there, I didn't have the vocabulary to like, okay, what do I look for? What is it called? What is this whole paradigm? And then I discovered that it's a scientific revolution happening. And that I was very interested in telling people about, because now I'm no longer this woo person talking about woo. I'm like talking about this scientific revolution. I'm talking about like this emergence, this future that's emerging, and it's extraordinary. It's just different from everything we've had in the past. And this idea of the future looking very different from what it looked like in the past, especially on like a scientific and medical science level. And like we know in America, there's a lot of need for like holistic care. There's a lot of need for accurate knowledge of what's going on. Like why am I suffering? And why am I suffering repeatedly? And why are these doctors not able to help? And to the point that they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not sick. There's nothing wrong with it. We don't know what's going on. Like, we don't know what the diagnosis is. You just have all these crazy symptoms that don't match any pattern of, regular structural disease. And I know there is like a lot of people out there, and
A lot of people.
it's estimated, this group of physicians that I learned from, they did a survey, and they found out that it's estimated 50% of all chronic illnesses in America are neuroplastic.
Wow.
And a neuroplastic diagnosis means it's a curable condition, even though you might have been having it for 10 years or 20 years or every day of your life. But it means it's a curable condition, and there's nothing wrong with you fundamentally. There's nothing wrong with your genes, with your any of it. It's just the brain has lost some of its sort of regularity. It's sort of healthy function in some ways. It's just become vigilant instead of like regulated. And then this also sort of points to a larger problem it's not just about healthcare and like these things. It's about like society as a whole. It's about culture. It's about knowledge, and it's about communication, because like the scientists are doing their work. They've been doing their work, but like, why are their medicine not all over the place? Well, maybe it's because there isn't that many like individuals, and definitely not that many institutions that are funding these things, these works, or even spreading the sort of knowledge and sort of building culture. So my goal is to build culture, to coming from a background of being Iranian under religious sort of dogmatic dictatorship, and coming to America, which was one of the greatest blessings of my life, because it was through America that I found the teachings of Yogananda, and it was from Yogananda's teachings that I found science, this not just any science, this more accurate model of science. And then I got to study with people like Howard Schubiner and these researchers, and I got to finally realize, actually maybe I am onto something. Maybe I am not like schizophrenic, because growing up, you think that there's something wrong with you. I'm just interested in different things than the sort of regular culture is.
Yeah, and that there's actually like purpose to that, and that it's valuable, right? Not just that you don't fit into a given model that's available, but that you have something to add to the culture.
Yeah, and something new, something that it's not completely new. I'm not innovating anything. I'm just putting these unique ideas together and painting a picture that was born of my experience of coming to America in 21st century and getting a country where there's freedom of religion. And when you have freedom of religion, you have freedom of everything, because you have freedom of thought and thinking and feeling, whereas in Iran that was not really allowed.
But it's interesting that freedom of thought in some ways also led to not to like try to pinpoint where the problem comes from, but there's a resistance to new ideas even in science, which science is kind of supposed to be this very exploratory, it's a method, right? But then the field of science can get dogmatic in a way, and then resist the very ideas that later are, widely known to be true. So, like you said, there's like 40 some years at least of a lot of these ideas being talked about in science. So what do you hope to see happen? Like, I think when you say you're not really innovating anything, I think you are in a way. Like, each person involved in communicating knowledge and a message is trying to explore the frontier of how to communicate it, right? So part of your innovation is you've learned from all of these methods and what's understood about these things now, and you're disseminating it in your way, right? And so what do you hope to create? Like when it comes to creating culture, what's the vision for that?
Yeah, that's a really beautiful question. So I am very interested in the intersection of science and religion. And I think it's about realizing religion is not so much about this, like, this thing going on out there, like this entities telling laws and principles, and like religion is not so much about what you, like, all this stuff you do, like rituals and specific ways of dressing or sitting or eating, you know. It's really about who you become, and it's really about and I think it's about like your sort of ability to listen to your intuition. It's your ability to, like, it feels so secure in your heart that when the moment of death comes, you realize that you're not alone and that you die without fear. I mean, that's a pretty great accomplishment, you know, when we live in a world where everybody's afraid of dying and everybody resents the moment to die, whereas religion says, what if it's not like that at all? What is it's about merging with instead of being separated from forever.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, some of this work in now modern neuroscience, consciousness research, even some of the theories with AI and like simulation theory, quantum sort of unified field theory, or the like David Boehm's the implicate order of things, or the implicate wholeness, which he's talking about this fabric that sort of the whole system is one system, and we don't need to compartmentalize this.
Yeah.
And I think this great yogi that I was hugely influenced by as a young woman, when I was starting to, you know, study his teachings, he talked a lot about the future and this new sort of, that him coming to America was a preparation for this future that is coming. And he predicted a lot of things. He predicted, for example, mind-body medicine being a real, you know, uncovered science. And at the time, you know, I didn't really realize that what I was reading was like was happening in my lifetime. Like, it was happening in front of me.
Right.
I just didn't know. I didn't know there is like these scientists, you know, that are doing exactly what he was teaching and proving it clinically. Like Joe Dispenza's research is now peer reviewed, you know, and it's like groundbreaking. And it just paints this great, beautiful picture. And what I'm really, really interested in is just creating hope for the future, for the youth of, you know, I'm a Gen Z. I know the struggles of, you know, being a young person growing up in a society that's so competitive and divided, and young people, all they care about is just, all I have to do is look good, then I'll be loved, then I'll be accepted. You know, when it's like, oh, but like people love, you know, because of who you are, because of the work you do, and because of your personality, not really your image. And yeah, and I know there are a lot of young people, a lot of people of variety of ages and backgrounds that are experiencing neuroplastic symptoms. I mean, every day I meet somebody new, I hear about their pain. I go to a wedding, I tell people what I do, and they're like telling me about their pain, or their mother's pain, or and I ask them questions, to see what kind of pain they have, and it's almost always neuroplastic. I've almost never encountered a person who's like, who I'm like, oh, the criteria, the pattern of this pain doesn't fit the neuroplastic criteria. I just never meet these people. So I know I have a solution at hand that can solve a dying problem. And, Seth Godin says, if you don't have a problem to solve, you don't have a revolution. But I'm very interested in the revolution, right? Because I think the revolution is here to stay, and I have evidence for it. One evidence is that these ideas were pioneered by John Sarno about 45 years ago. And these ideas, at the time, it was a small seed, and they have propagated, they have grown to enough of a critical sort of mass where it could, at any point, it could sort of burst open and spread even faster. And I think I am highly qualified to be one of the figures who, just because of the experience I've had with the direct experience I've had with this, that I think I would be a good marketer or distributor of this sort of mind-body paradigm.
Yeah. Well, people have very much gravitated to your writings online, and clearly there's been people who've gotten great results from what you've guided them through. And also, I'm very excited to have you speaking at the Future Proof Creator Summit this June, which is, it's aimed at entrepreneurs, people beginning their own similar journey, writing online or podcasting, whatever they're creating. And I think there's a lot of people, whether it's physical symptoms and illness that's kind of held them back in life, or beliefs around money, or lack of confidence about pursuing something purposeful and having the agency and freedom in life to pursue something purposeful and be able to profit from it. I think that what you're speaking on is going to be what we've talked about today. I think is really impactful for people finding that clarity. So I think what I'd like to ask you to sort of close up is how would you suggest, and I think this is going to be helpful to everyone, but there's a lot of women in this space who also might be especially encouraged to hear from a fellow woman who's, I think, seems to have kind of found that confidence in what you have to offer. How can people start to find the confidence to start as a creator or as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. For me, when I started, like I said, I wasn't very clear on what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. But I allowed myself a window of discovery. So the first few months, the first 5 months of me writing online, it was all about figuring out, what are my ideas? What am I doing? And what can I do with my ideas, in a tangible sense? Because I'm doing this to cause a ripple of change. And I'm not just here to make money online. You could make money online doing so many things. I'm picking something that's kind of hard to sell, because I have to really educate people and really show them that this is a great opportunity. So it's just about allowing yourself the grace of discovery. And I think that is such a feminine feature, allowing yourself to, fumble, allowing yourself to get messy, mess up, make mistakes. And I think I was not afraid of making mistakes. I just kept, I was like, okay, well, this is what I got, let's see what I could do with it. And also, allowing yourself to kind of be a like child a little bit, like a castle builder, like, get in the sand and make all this mess and create all these weird things that, maybe there's no meaning to it in the beginning, but the meaning is in you doing the thing that you feel to do without resisting, because the creator stuff is about you becoming a creator, not just putting content outside. So it's like, and who do you want to become?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, think of Michelangelo with the statue, and he just looked at a piece of rock and said, the statue was just in there, I just carved it out. And that's kind of what I'm referring to. Like, allow yourself to be whatever you are. Just give yourself permission to carve yourself out, to figure out, and to be as childlike as you possibly can be, but also very like purposeful and practical, and like, you gotta apply all of it.
Yeah. I love it though. It's like, it's this funny paradox, and you just perfectly described the metaphor of my podcast title, which is funny. Or like my newsletter was the Unblocked Carver.
The carver, yeah.
And so that's it. It's like you're carving yourself out of the block of potential, but you're already in there. And then allowing yourself to like play actually opens up more energy than like trying to get the result, right? And then you end up getting the result anyways.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Really appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, me too. I really appreciate you coming here and, doing the thing of like carving this opportunity out for everyone, for us all to meet Dan, to do a social gathering, really share with each other, learn how to refine our focus, have more conviction in ourselves, have more confidence in ourselves. And I think connection definitely does that. It definitely gives people the confidence to move forward.
Yeah, it's huge. I was writing online for a while, kind of all alone, and I would get some encouragement, but it was really, and this is like half of the return on investment, I would say, for any like course or cohort or in-person event. It's really like, can you find some of your people and then build those relationships? And I did Dan Koe's Writer's Boot Camp, and the content of it was extremely valuable. But then because like minds were attracted to that same thing, I got to meet some people with similar goals. And then it wasn't just like the shared mental energy now to reach those goals. It's more of that, like you said, there's like that psychosocial, like there's like an embeddedness and being connected with people. It unlocks way more than just like the shared skills now that are available. It's also like, I think it's maybe just a primal level of like feeling supported, right? And feeling like there's camaraderie involved. And that's when things started to really happen for me, and doing the podcast, even though the writing is still really valuable, I realized, podcasting, it lets me connect with the people I want to connect with. And that's been so exciting. So yeah, it's all very exciting. And so glad you were able to host me here and be on the podcast. We'll have lots more conversations to come, but I think we laid some really good groundwork about what you're able to help people with. And thank you, Kimia.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed this one, believe me, it really goes a long way in supporting the show if you go and click that like button. And if you haven't subscribed, click subscribe. It really goes a long way to support me and the show and extend our reach and make it possible for me to keep going. If anything from this episode was particularly insightful to you, please drop a comment down below and let me know. It always encourages me a lot to know that this show has a positive impact on people, so don't be shy. I'd love to interact. This has been the Unblocked Creators Podcast. I'm Jesse James Carver. Until next time, goodbye for now.